Chapter 1. Heaven and Earth, Only I Am Supreme. You are listening at famvetv.info. Who would have thought? I actually became a sweeping monk. Su Qin opened his eyes, got up and walked to the door. Su Qin was not from this world, he came from Earth. Su Qin was not a Shaolin Temple disciple either. When he crossed, he was the third young master of the Su family. The Su family was a local tyrant, rich family, and their territory spanned 100 miles radius. They have countless experts at their disposal, and even the patriarch himself is a grade 6 powerhouse. Unfortunately, when Su Qin was 10 years old, that is, a few days ago, a major enemy of the Su family came and injured the Su family patriarch. In order to preserve the bloodline of the family, the Su family had to disband the clan as a last resort, and Su Qin was secretly sent to the Shaolin Temple. In order to avoid the Shaolin Temple's rejection, the Su family did not reveal Su Qin's identity, and instead sent him in as an orphan. The Shaolin Temple had a profound background, and even though it had declined in recent years, it was still not something that the enemy of the Su family can deal with. Hence, as long as Su Qin enters the Shaolin Temple, he will be safe. Su Qin had successfully entered the Shaolin Temple, but since he had no martial Dao aptitude, he was assigned to the handyman court and became a sweeping monk. As Su Qin walked to the door, he saw dozens of novice monks in gray monks' robes. Su Qin walked over and stood somewhere behind the group. All right. Since you have entered the Shaolin Temple, everything in the past will have nothing to do with you. At this time, one monk that had a wide face and big ears spoke. Although the handyman court is not as good as the Dharma court and the martial monk court, it is quiet. So as long as you do your tasks properly, you will be disturbed by no one. The monk paused, then continued. Spread out now and do today's tasks. The novice monks then left one after another. Su Qin also took a broom and walked towards the Shaolin Temple's Great Strength Hall. Although Su Qin is a sweeping monk, he was not the only one in the entire Shaolin Temple. The Shaolin Temple, as a great sect, naturally occupies an enormous area of land. If it was solely cleaned by Su Qin, it would be impossible to clean it all, even if he spent a year doing nothing but clean. The place where Su Qin was responsible for was near the Great Strength Hall. The Great Strength Hall looked magnificent. It was one of the most important places in the Shaolin Temple. Every inch of its corner was full of majesty. Su Qin was standing outside the hall, and he could vaguely see the golden Buddha enshrined inside. Suddenly, a mechanical voice resounded in Su Qin's ears, detected that the host's current location meets the activation requirements. The system is now being activated. Activation is successful. The host can now sign in. System. Sign in. Su Qin's pupils slightly shrunk. Su Qin's thoughts quickly moved. He tentatively asked. Ugh. Where can I sign in? Anywhere in the world. As long as there is Dao accumulation, the host can sign in. Note. You can only sign in once a day. The more dense the Dao accumulation, the richer the rewards for signing in. Some places can be signed in repeatedly. The mechanical voice sounded in Su Qin's ear. Dao accumulation. Su Qin muttered to himself that he kind of got what the system was talking about. Not every place was eligible for a sign-in. For example, Su Qin had lived in the Su family residence for 10 years, but there was no Dao accumulation mentioned by the system there. That's why the system didn't activate back then. The Great Strength Hall, at the center of the Shaolin Temple, there's a golden Buddha enshrined here. And there was Dao accumulation here, hence he met the system's sign-in requirements. Su Qin's expression flashed with joy. Originally, Su Qin thought that he would just die alone as a Shaolin Temple sweeper. After all, the Shaolin Temple was not a place where anyone can just enter and then leave as they wish. Su Qin entered the temple as an orphan, which was equivalent to selling one's body to the Shaolin Temple. So unless someone with a high position agrees, he can't leave. Leaving was basically impossible. How could he get a higher up to agree? Would someone at that level care about Su Qin, who's a mere sweeping monk? Furthermore, if every monk was allowed to return and leave, the temple would have disappeared long ago. Even if the Su family repels the enemy and restores their former status, it was still impossible to ask the temple for him to leave. although the Su family is rich, the Shaolin Temple used to dominate the world and was a great sect of the Arhat world. The two were not at the same level at all, even the enemy who forced the Su family to disband the clan, was nothing in front of the Shaolin Temple. After Su Qin entered the Shaolin Temple, although he managed to get rid of the enemy's pursuit, he would be trapped in the Shaolin Temple for the rest of his life. But now, the system gave Su Qin hope. System, sign in. Su Qin settled down and muttered silently in his heart, and the next moment, congratulations to the host, sign in was successful. Host has obtained the divine art, Buddha's palm. The system's voice that's neither fast nor slow, resounded again in Su Qin's ears, Buddha's palm. Su Qin took a deep breath. If Su Qin remembers correctly, Buddha's palm is the strongest divine art in the Shaolin Temple, and it is known as Buddha's skill. The moment Su Qin obtained Buddha's palm, when above the great strength hall, a huge golden Buddha appeared. It had one finger pointing to the sky and one finger pointing to the ground. It was majestic and oppressive above the heavens and below the earth. Only I am supreme. Buddha's radiance pervaded, illuminating the entire Shaolin Temple. The light contained countless great principles of the way. At this moment, the Shaolin Temple shook, and countless monks fell to the ground, bowing as they worshipped, honor to the Holy One, honor to Buddha. Shua. At the same time, several silhouettes quietly appeared outside the great strength hall. The person wearing a big red cassock and holding a 9-ring tin stick was Abbot Huiwen of the Shaolin Temple, the abbot of this generation. Translator's note. An abbot is the head of a monastery, while the others were the heads of the various courts. At this time, everyone, including Abbot Huiwen, were staring in shock at the huge golden Buddha that appeared above the great strength hall. Namo Amitabha. Abbot Huiwen moved towards the huge golden Buddha and bowed. Likewise the other court heads also bowed. Namo Amitabha. After some time, the Buddha's radiance slowly dissipated. It was only until the Buddha's radiance disappeared completely did Abbot Huiwen dare to raise his head. Such rich Buddha nature. Translator's note. Buddha nature is the highest level of enlightenment. Abbot Huiwen's heart was shaken. He was not only the abbot of the Shaolin Temple, but also a world-famous martial Dao powerhouse. The golden Buddha that presented itself just now was completely condensed from Buddha nature. Be aware that even an existence at the Arhat level and possesses Buddha nature, has far less than 1/10,000th of the Buddha nature that the golden Buddha had. Is it possible that there is a disciple favored by Buddha? Is that why this happened? Abbot Huiwen looked towards the great strength hall where many disciples were serving. The great strength hall is the powerhouse of the Shaolin Temple, hence there's disciples serving every moment. If there really was a disciple that is favored by Buddha, he can only be among these disciples. The other court heads also thought of this, and their eyes looked towards the great strength hall. Ever since the last holy monk died during meditation 60 years ago, the Shaolin Temple has never given birth to another holy monk. As a result, the status of the Shaolin Temple had dropped rapidly. If there was indeed a disciple who has obtained such a huge amount of Buddha nature, let alone a holy monk, even achieving Arhat Buddhahood can be done with no difficulty. Thinking of this, the heads became enthusiastic. You guys all retreat, don't get close without my approval. The head of the martial monk court has a hot personality, so when he glanced at Su Qin and the others, they were immediately deterred. Yes. The handyman disciples glanced at each other and left the place, but what the heads and Abbot Huiwen didn't know was that Su Qin was responsible for all of this. If they knew that a sweeper who was standing in front of them was the cause, they would not believe it. Listen to the full novel at FameTV.info, direct link in the description.